Kia ora, bros and girls. Welcome back to the channel. So we're going to do a completion guide for variant 3 polar opposites. And this is the one that has to do all about techs and tech champions. So there is like a gigantic list of people that are really useful for this. Pretty much if you are heavy or you have had good luck in the tech space, then you're going to do really well in this variant. So Ghost with Hood synergy can destroy this. A really high level Starkey can destroy this. Guillotine 2099 is fantastic. Sentinel absolutely rips and shreds through this. Warlock obviously an MVP. Now, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, I think fortunately for me, I still actually use Thing for most of this. I didn't use any text apart from I used Warlock in chapter 3 in the final chapter. So let's quickly jump in and talk about the different path and talk about what's the easiest way and who the bosses are, what you're likely to face. So the first map, the good thing about this variant as well is it's quite small. There's not that many maps in this path, and there's not as many maps as in variant 1 and variant 2. In those ones, it's one chapter. Every chapter has 3 quests. This one is 3 chapters, but only 2 quests and very few lines. So there's kind of 2 easy lines here and in map 1, and it really depends on the champs that you have. If you have bleed immune, then this left path is going to be the easiest for you. Wasp is probably the only difficult one on here, but you can just parry heavy and take care of her. Groot is pretty easy. Evade the SP1. Red Hulk's pretty easy. Evade the SP1. You need if you're bleed immune, you probably have a poison immune. So like the robots do well here. Nebula, Ultron, Warlock, Sentinel, Guillotine 2099 all do pretty well against Abomination and Scarlet Witch. Both of them have poison. And then Old Man Logan, evade the SP1, and then you come up against Magneto. Now Magneto, so if you don't have a bleed immune, the other good path to go is the right side, which is Limber and Transducer. The only real tricky fight here is probably Thing is a little bit tricky, Punisher is a bit tricky as well, and maybe Killmonger if you don't have an armor breaker on your team. It's also good to know that if you're not using the Think synergy, which I used for this, then anyone who you bring who is not a tech champion, their damage is reduced by 50%. And for every additional tech champion you have, the debuffs are increased by 10%, so that means your stuns, your shocks, your incinerates, all of that. Sentinel, he gets 1% additional per damage, true damage per analysis charge. So that means once he's fully charged up, he's doing double damage like all the time. So basically, techs are kind of the kings of this particular quest. But you can use Thing because remember, Thing can get 1,000 plus 1,000 in damage, and you can double that to plus 2,000. So even if you're weak, that's still 500 to 1,000 damage rather than your normal tech champ, which will do 100%. So let's talk about the boss. The boss is Magneto. He's not really too bad. He's got this flux dispersal, which basically means that every hit he's going to reduce all damage by 5%, so he's going to take less and less damage, and every now and then you're just going to have to throw in a heavy to remove that and to be able to actually do damage to him. He's also on the Limber node, so that means you're going to run out of parries after a while, and his SP2 is unblockable. Saying that he is on the Oscillate node, which means that he's gonna go very defensive, which is probably when you can do your heavy in the armor up mode, and then he's gonna have that Fury passive, and he's gonna start coming at you and throwing specials, and that's when you can intercept. That's when you have your openings for evading the SP1 or the SP2 and attacking. So he's pretty straightforward. You don't really need a specific counter for this. Like I said, any of the tech champs can do it. And then the second map, once you've done that, is another Magneto. And this map has a few more interesting paths. This right one is kind of really annoying because you have Electro on it, and you also have Annihilus, and some people are not very familiar with Annihilus. That middle one is a little bit more difficult with Power Gain and All or Nothing. This path is actually quite easy if you have Guillotine 2099 or Warlock, because you can always keep them away from the SP3, which means they're never going to throw specials, and it's just about evading. So that's fantastic. If you have Guillotine 2099 or Warlock, basically someone who can drain power. Otherwise, the easier path is probably this left one. The right one's a little bit tricky because cruelty and aspect of evolution can get pretty annoying over time. The left path is pretty easy if you don't have a power drainer, because all it is martial mastery. Every 6 hits inflicts stun, so just don't get hit and you'll be absolutely fine. You got Miles Morales there, who's going to be quite annoying, but you can parry three hits. Taskmaster, the SP1 is pretty easy to evade the end of it, but you just have to block through the first bit, but it's not unblockable, so it doesn't matter. The SP2 is pretty easy to evade. Gulk, you're better off to go with medium combos, so that he doesn't go to 100% crowd excitement and then he goes unblockable with that smash. Doc Ock's pretty easy, just evade the SP1. Massacre is pretty easy, just evade the SP1. Gambit's pretty easy, evade the SP1 or the SP2, and then you arrive at the boss Magneto. Also, if you go on the All or Nothing path, then you can't have a tougher mini boss in Nick Fury, which is a little bit more annoying, but it can be done. And then you come up against the boss, which is Magneto. Now Magneto has Gas Warp. He's limber like the other Magneto, and he's also got Fury, Aggression, and Enhance. So you have to play a little bit more aggressively against this guy. But the Gas Warp basically means that every time he's hit, he reduces your block penetration by 5, and after about 20, he's got 100% block penetration. So whether you block or not, it's going to do the same damage. The good news is, though, you can remove that with shocking him. So Sentinel's Heavy shocks him. Starkey's SP2 shocks him. Iron Man Infinity War can also shock him. So there's multiple options here, and Thing can just outright destroy this guy before you have to even worry about it. So again, you don't need a specific counter. This guy is the first chapter is pretty easy, and once you're finished with that, you got your 5-star 2-3 gems. So that makes things a little bit easier. So then you jump into chapter 2, and chapter 2 is it's really not so bad if you have a bleed immune character. Probably let's have a look at the path just to remind myself. The Fury path can be a little bit difficult because you need the poison immune. The Power Gain one needs a controller, and it's a little bit more difficult. So I think the easiest path actually on my notes, not the Fisticuffs one, is probably this one here. The second path in, which is Enhanced, Bleed, and Debuff. Especially if you have a bleed immune, this path is really easy, but even if you don't have a bleed immune, just don't get hit and you won't bleed. The debuffs lasting 100% longer doesn't mean anything really, and the fights are not all that bad. So Venom's SP1 is pretty easy to evade. Deadpool's SP1 and SP2 is pretty easy to evade. Namor, once you get him to 30, I can't remember what they're called, Imperious Rexes or whatever. Once you get him to 30 of those charges, basically he can't get to SP3, and you can just evade the SP1 or the SP2 and just keep playing aggressively and hitting into him. Blade, the SP1 is pretty easy to evade or block the SP2. X23, just evade the SP1 or the SP2 is pretty easy. And then you rock on up to the boss, which is Wolverine. Wolverine is not too bad, actually. The only thing is he's got a lot of enhanced regen, and he also has Vigorous Assault, which means that anytime he's got regen, he goes unblockable, which is obviously a lot of the time he has regen, unless you're going to use ability accuracy. He also has a Smitey Charge, so when he dashes at you, he's immune to debuff. So that means that when he dashes at you, you can't parry him. So you just have to kind of like evade beta, the SP1, the specials. The SP1 and the SP2 are both pretty easy to evade, but just be aware that like if he dashes at you, you can't parry. You have to evade it and look for the opening. So it's better to kind of hit into his block or be quite close to him if you're going to parry. And then you can just push him to his SP1, SP2, evade that, and carry on. Again, doesn't really need a specific counter, but obviously Warlock is always nice because he shuts down the regen. Sentinel is nice because the SP1 shuts down the regen. Or you can just outdamage him outright with like Thing. You can reverse his regen with a Human Torch. You can destroy him with Sparky, with Ghost, with Star-Lord. So many options. This boss fight is not not that bad at all, just so long as you're aware that you can't really parry him. You just have to intercept or evade the SPs. So that's pretty easy. And then you get into map 2 of chapter 2. So with this one, I'm trying to remember here if I have a look. This path, Spite and Improved Power Gain, is definitely not the one for you. Korg you don't particularly want with Biohazard and Splash, so it's probably going to be one of these two. Actually, both of them are pretty easy, so it's kind of a matter of like picking your poison here. So if you go down, I find the easiest path was Plagued Mind. Now Red Skull, he's a little bit tanky, but he's not that hard. You just evade the SP1, Vision evade SP1, SP2, Hawkeye evade the SP1 or the SP2, Dormammu, just don't Dex away from him. Look to evade the SP1 and make sure that you mistime your dash back so that you purposefully do not evade it. And you should be fine. And don't bring in somebody with Fury and stuff like that because you're going to take legion damage. And then Psylocke's pretty easy to evade her SP1. It's a little bit like Angela's, and her SP2 actually is not that bad. Or you can go the other path, which is the Bleed Crit, which is not you don't really have very difficult fights, but you do face against a Domino mini boss. Now another cool feature is of this whole tech kind of thing is that all tech champions are immune to ability accuracy modification. So basically, like Mephisto, all tech champions are now going to be immune to all this critical failure bullcrap that Domino puts on you. So if you find that path easier and you're okay with fighting Domino, then you can go that way. But I found that second path is probably the easiest. And then you have Storm, and Storm is basically she's got protection shielding, which is a little bit annoying, and then her special attacks are unblockable. Both her special attacks are easy to evade, but she's all about basically she's going to do more damage with the specials. So if she hits you once, you're probably gone, but just don't get hit, and you can take care of her with pretty much anyone. Her SP1 is pretty easy to evade, her SP2 is also pretty easy to evade once you get the timing down, and yeah, you just keep evading and keep hitting into her. Doesn't really require any specific counter. Any really tech champion will take care of her. So that's chapter 1, chapter 2. They're both pretty easy to get through, and then you come into chapter 3. And chapter 3 is where things start getting a little bit trickier. The path also starts getting a little bit trickier, but 3.1 I think has some pretty nasty path. If you're okay with tenacity, then this right path is not terrible, but you're going to end up facing either a really annoying Nightcrawler at the end or a rogue that has 1% regen. A lot of people find this rogue difficult. I don't really find her too difficult, and I think mainly because I had a heal blocker. So I had Warlock and I had Sentinel, and I didn't even notice her because with Warlock she doesn't heal at all. And the rest of her stuff is pretty easy. You just like evade the SP1 and hit her. So if you have someone who does have a heal block, like Warlock or Sentinel, you're really not going to notice her. But if you don't, then it can be quite an annoying fight. You probably don't want to go through the middle path. That is a bit annoying, and you don't want to go through that second path because you're going to have to fight kind of like Darkhawk and stuff. So so the easiest path I found generally for most people is probably going to be the Hurt Locker one. You don't have many tough champions on there. The only thing you have to remember is Hurt Locker will do a lot of damage to you if you use your same special twice. So just don't use the same specials. You got to mix them up. If you throw the SP1 last time, you got to throw the SP2 this time. And a little bit like that. So you have Ghost, which is pretty easy to evade either SP1 or SP2. Medusa to evade the SP1. Nebula evade the SP1 or the SP2. Sentry evade the SP1 or the SP2. Spider-Gwen just parry in 3-hit. Hood evade the SP1. Don't push him to his SP2. And then you come up against Colossus. And Colossus is actually, he's really tanky. He's a really nasty boss. What I would recommend here, because I wasn't able to one-shot him with the thing, what I'd recommend here is having someone who does damage over time. So Sentinel's Incinerate works really well. Iron Man Infinity Wars Shock does a lot of damage over time. Domino with Heavy, with the synergy will do a lot of damage. and Starkey with his SP2 with his shock will do a lot of damage. I think I'm not sure. I think he's immune to a few of those things. So just I can't quite remember because I haven't played him that much. I know he's definitely immune to like cold snap and bleed. I don't think he's immune to poison or shock. Um, so yeah, so that's kind of a way to go. All the other option is to use kind of wall lock and just keep armor breaking him down. Really, the main thing you have to remember. Sorry, I talk crap. So basically, this guy also has a bleed on him. He's got this chitinous thorns node, which means that every time he has an armor up buff, he causes a bleed on you. So you're definitely going to need someone who is bleed immune. So for that, you're gonna need like Thing with HT synergy or with the Human Torch synergy to do to do incinerate damage, or Thing and just do a lot of damage to him. You're gonna need Warlock with his shock and his armor breaks. You're gonna need Nebula with her shocks. Um, Ultron's probably not a great option. Mysterio with his poison will probably work. Um, Although Mysterio is not bleed immune now that I think about it. So yeah, basically somebody bleed immune. I'm looking really at Warlock or Warlock, Infinity, Iron Man, Infinity War, or really Sentinel. Those are kind of like your options. Otherwise, it's going to be a really, really long fight. If you just bring someone bleed immune, it's going to be a really, really long fight. It's best to bring someone who is bleed immune and can do damage over time. Because he's not really that difficult to fight. He's just really, really tanky, and this is going to be a really, really long fight. Um, so that one is a little bit nasty, and then you get into the final map, final boss, and this one is probably a little bit easier. So the inner path here are a little bit more difficult, and the outer path are a little bit easier. So you can either go the left one, which is recharge and all or nothing, which basically means you don't generate any power from hitting. You just hold block, get your whatever special you want, and then throw it, and that does 400 damage because you got power shield as well. Particularly if you got like a power drainer, so like vision works amazing here. Magic works amazing here. Wall lock obviously works fantastic. Void do damage over time. Or the other path you can go is combo party. So it's really whichever you prefer. Combo party means that every 10 hits you gain increased crit damage, so long as I think you don't lose it. And so it actually helps you out to do more damage. And all the fights are fairly easy. Venom evade the SP1, VTD evade the SP1 or the SP2. You have a magic, which is a little bit tricky with the limbo, but other than that, both the specials are easy to evade. Scarlet Witch, which might throw some poison on you, but if you have a robot, that's absolutely fine, and her SP1, SP2 are easy to evade. Mysterio, it's pretty easy. You just armor break him, and he's no problem to deal with. Also, if he's got the SP1, you just parry. And just wait until the purple thing goes out, so you don't get the damage reflected back to you. And he's pretty easy other than that. Ebony Maw is a little bit tricky, just around his falter and stuff, but if you're used to playing against him, it's fine. Minister Sinister, if you have a heal blocker, Warlock or Sentinel are fantastic for this guy, and you're going to need a heal blocker anyway, so if you do, then this is the path for you. If not, then this path on the left is probably easier with Kingpin, evade the SP1, Ghost Rider, evade the SP1 or the SP2, Gamora, evade the SP1 or the SP2. HT is a little bit tricky. Don't bring in like someone who does energy damage. You probably want to bring someone who does a lot of damage and can bleed. So again, Warlock with his parry heavy is really, really good here. Proxima is easy, evade the SP1, SP2. And Cap evade the SP1, SP2, and you're going to be like holding block and just doing a ton of special damage anyway, so that's not a big deal. And then you don't have to face a mini boss on that side to come up to Kang. So Kang is one of the most annoying bosses if you're not well prepared for him, and that's because of the selective time stream. So selective time stream means that every 20 seconds he's basically going to come back to full life, and you can't reverse the heal, and you can't block the heal. The only person who can block the heal is Warlock, right? And if you are not lucky enough to have Warlock, makes this look like an arena fight, right? So not even like alternate universes and time streams is gonna stop Warlock from infecting you with his virus and shutting down your region. So he's fantastic for Kang because it's basically just evading the SP1, and just continually fighting as normal, and over time he dies. If you don't have Warlock, you don't have access to Warlock, then what you need is someone with a Shock or an Incinerate. Because if you have a Shock or Incinerate on Kang just before that 20-second selective time stream, then that also poses the regen. So he doesn't actually regen from that. So people have done this with Starkey and throwing the SP2. They've done it with Sentinel, throwing the SP2 on the Incinerate. They've done it with Human Torch, because obviously Human Torch can incinerate him all day long. And then that shuts down his, that basically shuts down that regen. You can use Thing with the Human Torch synergy and spam the SP1. You can use Domino with the Heavy, and that incinerates. There's obviously there's a lot of options. If you're shit out of luck and you don't have anyone who can shock and do a lot of damage, anyone who can incinerate and do a lot of damage, but say like your only option is Ghost or Star-Lord, then the other option is to come in here, do as much damage as you can, and just around 19 seconds is to pause the fight and quit. Right, and I think this is the strategy I used the first time. I didn't have Warlock to shut him down. I think I brought in Star-Lord thinking, oh, I'm going to be fantastic and I'm going to be able to out-damage this guy. I got up to around 200 combo. I managed to get him down to like 50%, and then he healed back to full life. And then it was kind of game over. So then I did that a couple of times, and then eventually I just, what I did was I came in with Star-Lord. I did as much damage as I could, and then I would pause at 90 seconds, and I would pull out, I would quit the fight, and I would go back in, revive Star-Lord, and go again. And I think I was able to kill him off in probably 2 or 3 revives. But since then, obviously, since my first completion run, I got Warlock, and I was able to just destroy this guy one shot, like all day long, all the time. So yeah, hopefully this helped you out, and if you finish that, then that's it. You get your 5-star rank 3 to rank 4 gem. Hopefully it helped you out. If it did, like, subscribe, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload all the one-shots, apart from Colossus, because I didn't actually one-shot him. I'm going to upload all the one-shots for you guys in the next video, so you can see how easy or difficult the bosses are, and what works and what doesn't. Alright, kakite bros and girls. See you in the next one.